Sweet.
Hi! Welcome to another exciting edition of Cambridge Inside Out, the latest and the greatest. My name's Robert Winters, and you're not. And?
My name's Susana Segat, and I'm still adjusting myself here. Hello.
Well adjusted.
I'm well adjusted. And we have a very important guest tonight. Do you know who it is, Robert?
I think it's this guy.
Now, in this show, we have people introduce themselves, so you're stuck.
I'm David Maher, Mayor of Cambridge, and pleasure to be here.
We're so happy you're here. You know, I don't often say this in public, but I really enjoy watching you be mayor.
Thank you.
You know, you run the school committee meetings. I love watching you run them, and you're very decent when you run the city council meetings too, and it shows.
Thank
When
you.
people watching it on TV, it really shows.
You know, it's funny because I think that in public life that we have a service that we need to keep in mind, that we're there to listen to the public, and I try to do that all the time. I think that it is, it's the least that we can do. I think that to hear people that come forward, you know, there are folks that come to every meeting and want to be heard on every issue, but there are people who it takes a great deal of courage to come
Absolutely.
forward on an issue, and so I think it's very helpful to me to be able to shape where I stand on an
Yeah.
issue, to be able to listen to people.
I mean, it's scary to go to City Hall. It's scary to go into the city council chamber, and then to go before on the podium with the microphone, with people with a clock timing you on TV.
It's true.
It's terrifying.
It's true.
And I think you handle it so well.
Thank
I'm
you.
really impressed by that.
Actually, so far this term, it seems like people have been, even from the public, have been reasonably courteous toward the elected officials.
I agree.
haven't
I agree.
seen
What's a
whole
good
lot of
atmosphere?
hostility being projected. I think that's a nice
That you've
nice-
seen in the past?
Well, yeah, sometimes. Yeah. Actually, let me just ask a couple of kind of mayor-type questions. Since I know you've been mayor before. Was it 2 terms or 3 terms ago?
2.
2 terms ago. So I guess my questions are sort of 2. One is, and then some. One is, how is it like being mayor then versus now? Which I guess includes a question about how does the previous council or councils compare to the one you're
Well, let's talk about
sharing
that
right
one
now?
first. Who were you
Yeah.
the mayor for? Who was on the council? Do you remember?
The last time?
Yeah.
Well, I think that
Well, there's been a lot of changes. This could take a
Yeah,
while.
I think the last time there were that I was mayor, there was probably only one new councilor on that term. I think Leland Chung was the new councilor my first term. This term with 4 new councilors, it's a little bit different.
Well, and
Yeah.
a new city manager.
And a new city
Yeah.
manager.
Which is a difference,
It's very
too.
true. I mean, I was first elected to the council in 1999. Prior to my being on the city council, I was on the school committee, so
Right.
I knew Bob Healy and I knew Rich Rossi. But I think that when you look at that and you see a shift of 4 members of the council and then a new city manager, it is a different dynamic. But it's very, very enjoyable. Rich has been great to work with, and I think that all of the new councilors are all learning kind of the ropes, so to speak.
Right.
And you know, Mark kind of came to the, I think that's a signal for a pen.
What do you want? What do you like, Susanna?
I'm
Pen?
sorry.
There we go.
we're being worse than
Mark
some.
knew kind of procedurally
Yeah.
from being on the school committee, but I think everybody's doing a great job.
Yeah, I think those who are kind of new, they're very upfront about the fact that they're learning some of the ropes too.
Right.
You know, so that's been actually
Right.
working reasonably well. Now, I think one big difference between mayor and being a city councilor, other than, well, you're all elected together, we're all city councilors, but other than chairing the meetings, you're now an ex officio member of all the committees.
Yep.
So you could go, I guess.
Or not.
Right. But you don't have specific jobs with the committees. You sort of are there as sort of the mayor who knows best about things, I suppose. But what's just to contrast, like let's say I'm about to say semester. You see, just my from my perspective. But last council term,
Give
when
it the
you're-
old college try.
Right, exactly, but, you know, when you're chairing committees and whatever versus being mayor, when you're appointing committees but not actually being sort of a regular on them. Well, what's the big difference?
Well, you know, I would say that I thoroughly enjoy the city council and the work of the city council.
Right.
And a lot of the work of the city council happens in subcommittees. So I think that you know that I have always, quite honestly, I don't think it's a secret, I have chaired probably more subcommittee meetings
That's right.
than most of my colleagues have. It takes a lot of time and a lot of effort, but it's also, I think it really is where the heavy work takes place. So, you know, I thought long and hard about who was going to be the chairs of committees this time. And I think that we've got a good balance on the committees. And, you know, we did do something that there were, quite honestly, I think there were too many committees.
Yeah.
And they were becoming a little bit too cumbersome. So we combined and narrowed the number of committees down to a manageable number. So
There's
most,
11 now, right?
I think it's 11, that's right. And I think it was 17.
17 down to 11.
Which is a lot.
Before. And so most people are the chairs of one committee, and they may be the co-chair of a second committee, but it makes it a little bit more manageable. And that's somewhat of a change that we're seeing.
All right. Oh, and it seems, you know, just from the face of it, that the choice, it was a good matching job for people's skills to the committees. That was a concern of mine. You know, I looked at the old committee structure. I said, well, we've got this group of 9, these jobs that need to be done. I said, I don't see how this is going to work. You know,
You know,
but it worked out.
and what I would say, you know, I have been on city councils in the past where it was the victor.
Got the spoils.
Correct.
All right.
And so if you didn't vote for the mayor, you were chastised and you didn't get what you want. I tried very hard not to do that and to match people up where their skill level was, and I think we did a good job with it.
Actually, last week, Dennis Carlone, Councilor Dennis Carlone actually said he doesn't hold a grudge, and by, what do you know? He absolutely
far,
really
so
doesn't.
good.
So far. You know, so that sort of worked out pretty well.
See, for me, what's interesting about being mayor is that you work really hard to get people to work together and to have a collegial atmosphere, and you put people in their subcommittees to move their work. And you, as a counselor, also have issues that you care about. And
Right.
so what avenues do you use to move your own agenda when you are also above it all and just trying to guide the whole works? Because you have to have issues you care about for your own campaign, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think the mayor can go a long way to set the tone of where the council goes. And you know, I think that we're looking, you know, I'll just give you an example that I think that right now in Cambridge, you know, I'm a firm believer, and people who know me have heard me say this 100 times, that we live and work in one of the best cities in the United States. I think Cambridge is a great city and a great community that cares deeply about its residents. That doesn't mean that we're perfect, and there's a lot of things that we need to do and need to still address. And some of the things that I think are most difficult are when we think about the achievement gap for kids in public schools, the fact that kids of color are still not learning at the same level and opportunity that other kids are. And I also think that we're looking at a middle class in the city that is really kind of disappearing.
Vanishing.
And those are very, very troubling aspects to me, having grown up here, you know, the son of a police officer. I tell people all the time that I grew up on a street where, you know, there's probably only about a dozen houses on the street. And all of those homes were owned by people that were public servants. They were the policemen, firemen, worked for the post office, whatever.
What street?
Blakesley Street in West
Okay,
Cambridge.
Okay.
And today, John Malkovich calls Blakesley Street home.
Really?
So it's changed dramatically. And I think that while much of the change that we've seen in the city is terrific and really has helped us, it is leaving some folks behind. And that's where I think the community and the city has got to do a better job kind of making sure that we extend a hand to folks that feel that they've been left behind and help them on their way.
I think that the two big items that you just mentioned, closing achievement gaps and addressing the sort of the diminishing middle class, are probably the two most difficult issues I could identify in the city.
And most worth pursuing.
Absolutely,
They
but
are.
definitely amongst the
And,
hardest.
and I will say, I think that with the achievement gap, it was somewhat controversial during my last term as mayor, but that is why I really felt that the innovation agenda in looking at how to reshape the public schools was the right thing to do. We had some of our public schools where the 8th grade had as few as 9 or 10
Yeah.
kids in it. And in one school, you were looking at 9 boys, 1 girl, and 9 of the kids were kids of color. We were just not offering those kids an equal opportunity. And I think that now we have kind of critical masses in these 4 upper schools.
Is it 88 per grade?
Just
More
about.
or less was what
It's,
it was
it's
originally
between
targeted?
80 and 100, and I think that, now you're able to have music groups, you're able to have drama classes, you're able to do things that a group of kids could do together.
Right.
And that was a goal. And I'm not gonna tell you that we snapped our fingers and that the innovation agenda, we just achieved something great. It's gonna happen over time, but I think the offering for kids is much better and will continue to improve over
And
time.
I was glad to see they did and we'll see how it shakes out, but the small modification to the mathematics curriculum.
Exactly.
The original, well, what was originally promised wasn't quite what was enacted initially, but now a year down the road, I guess, they're sort of committed to finding a middle ground.
And I think if we're gonna continue to improve it, you have to admit that some things you're gonna try are gonna work, and other things may not be working the same way that we thought, and you have to be willing to change and address that in a continuing effort. But-
About the innovation agenda, one thing I don't know is, are different programs being tried in different schools, and if something works, it's being spread in the other schools, or every school's doing exactly the same thing? How is that working?
Well, there's a little bit, I would say that 80+% is the same, and then there is change. And I will give you one example that, so one of our community partners is Cambridge School Volunteers.
Yep.
They do the, not the Keep Help program, no, I'm forgetting the name of it.
Well, just tell us
But
what
that
it
is in 2 of the upper schools where they are, Net Pals, I'm sorry, where people are working with kids that will help them over the computer. So over the internet, they will be able to have a conversation, and that is in 2 of the upper schools. This next year, that's going to be added to a 3rd upper school.
Because it's working.
Because it's working, with the goal of that being
That's
in all
great.
4 of the upper schools by next year. And that, I think that's an example of looking at what is working and trying to adjust
That's wonderful.
the programming.
I'm happy to hear that.
One of the things I had on my little list of inquiries here was about what a typical workday is for mayor. But what you just said here kind of makes me want to modify the question to sort of say, typically, if there is a typical workday for being mayor, and I doubt that that's true, how much of the day do you find focusing on school committee matters versus city council matters?
Well, I will clearly tell you that in my first term, I would wager it was 75% of my day was spent on educational
Yeah.
issues.
Yeah.
This has been slightly different, but I will tell you, I think that this city takes the attention to public education very, very carefully, and I think that the team that the superintendent has brought forward with a new assistant superintendent in charge of, it's all changed since you and I were there originally, but students services, which is special education, we have a new assistant superintendent there, we have a new assistant superintendent for curriculum and development, and really have built this really very, very solid team.
Mhm.
And one thing that I did just in the past couple of weeks is to bring all of the school department hierarchy, the cabinet of the school department, along with the leadership from the city side and the school committee and the city council all together in an effort to kind of have a conversation and just be able to talk to one another and get to know who people are. It wasn't policy driven, but it was really an interpersonal time. So we're going to be doing more of those types of things so people are not surprised by issues, or it's
Yeah.
not the city doing something or the school department, but together it's
So,
the,
so in other words, we're not gonna have one of those little kerfuffles like we had over the budget hearings last year?
let's hope not.
Let's hope not.
I mean, we talk about having 4 new counselors, but we often don't think about that 1/3 of the school committee is new. So
Correct.
you also have to build a team there.
Correct. And I'll tell you that the school committee, just in the time that I was gone, in the 2 years, Mervyn came on board, as
Yeah.
well as the 2 new members there, so you wind up with 3 relatively new members that I hadn't worked with. But they're doing a great job, and I think that, you know, we're kind of inching our way through the budget process on the school department side, presenting that budget to the city council, and I think that what you see is a fairly unified front with the school committee in looking at prioritizing everything and having everything relate back to the goals of the school committee, which is the right way to
Student
do.
success, right?
Exactly,
Right.
exactly.
Now, the school department budget, I presume, was sort of signed, sealed, and delivered over to the city side now?
Yes.
And is it this coming Monday?
Oh, it's done.
It must be,
Well, the
Oh.
school department budget
Yeah.
is finished the school process.
Right,
and-
right,
right.
And
And
now
now
it
it's-
goes to
It's
the
over.
city council and the school
and
committee.
I'm only saying that because I know that this coming Monday is budget overview, and I presumably it's the day when the budget book comes to the
Yes.
council. And I don't know.
Well, maybe you can explain that process a little bit.
Well, typically, so we have 3 dates of budget hearings that are set up with the city council. One, you will have operationally an all-day event where city departments will come forward. There's a second day, just like that.
That the
for
public can see.
Absolutely. And those are on television, and the public is invited to comment on those. And then there is a third, it's an evening meeting that will be specifically for the school department budget as it's presented. You know, the city council will go over in great deal the school department budget, but the authority of the city council is really to approve, are we funding our public schools adequately? That's really the question for the city council. It's not necessarily, is it how every dollar is being spent? That's the job of the school committee. And I
And
think,
it irritates the school committee for the city council to think that way, right?
well,
If they thought that way.
I think that there have been tensions, and having served on both bodies, I completely understand it,
Yeah.
that my belief is that the school committee is charged with the operation of the school budget and hires the superintendent to carry that out.
Right.
And that they have done a very, very good job at asking questions and holding a budget process that has been quite lengthy. In fact, I would go further to say the school committee is much more involved in the development
Yes.
of the school budget than the city council is in the development of the
Oh,
city
that's
budget.
interesting.
That's very true.
It
That's
is.
very
Now,
true.
It
why
is.
is that?
Well, you know, typically what you have is a city council, a city budget that is prepared over many months by the city manager, and it is presented in a final format to the city council. The city council is adopting the city council goals, and all of the expenditures or the growth within the budget is brought back and looked at. How does it
From those goals.
correct? How does it meld with the goals?
Right.
And they do a good job with that, but really, the school
And
department.
is that how they present it to you?
They do, they do. And so what we do is we invite in, you know, half the department heads, and if there is any city councilor that has a question about any department, they pull that section of the budget, and we will go over that.
I see.
till all the
Makes sense.
questions have been answered.
Right.
Whereas on the school committee,
Well, the school committee, the budget is kind of, a preliminary budget is brought forward, presented to the school committee. The superintendent and the school committee listen to public input and public comment. They listen to their own concerns and express their own concerns. Then typically the superintendent will take that budget back, make revisions and changes, bring it back to the school committee, and then it will be aired again.
Right.
So we had multiple budget hearings. And I think that in the end, 7 members of the school committee passed this budget and forwarded.
wow, that's
So
impressive.
it was good.
Right.
That's really good.
And then ultimately, the city council, in theory, votes just on the bottom line, as we say.
In theory.
In
Well, they
theory.
should.
Well, I mean, last year was a little unusual.
And, and I will say that we also just held, I saw what happened last time and said, how do we avoid that? How do we keep the council feeling that they have been kept abreast of what is going on with the priorities of the school committee and the school department? So we held a roundtable
Just a
about
few
3
weeks
weeks
ago,
ago. And, we heard kind of an overview of all of the big projects that the school department and initiatives that the school department is working on. And I think it helped the council understand where all these things are coming from. And again, they're issues that are not necessarily, they may be easy to diagnose the problem. They're very, very difficult to correct the
Oh,
problem
absolutely.
or address them. And I think that in many instances, we have made great strides in addressing the issue. We haven't solved the issue yet. And that's, that's what we want people to know and understand.
And very few people in the country have.
Exactly. I mean, the issue,
It's not
the
like we
issue
can do it.
around the achievement gap, Cambridge continues to struggle with the achievement gap, but it is nationally a growing and very, very difficult problem. And we have to figure out a better way to address it. I'm going to say that we have 2 schools that are level 3 schools. They're schools that have been recognized for having deficiencies
By the state.
by the state, and that I'm going to say in a way that it's almost like a triage that the school superintendent and the team have been working on in each of those schools to go in and be able to address the problem and correct it. And I will say, I visited this past week, I visited the Kennedy Longfellow School, which is one of those schools, and it's extraordinary to see the level of excitement among the teaching staff at the Kennedy Longfellow. They had received a Merck Foundation grant through Lesley College for technology, and the great things that are happening there. And I was able to spend some time there with representatives from Lesley and the school, and looking at how these issues were being addressed. And I hope, and I feel pretty confident about it, that both of the schools that are level 3 will be coming out of that designation.
So when you're classified as a level 3 school, how long a period of time does the state give us to move up?
Well, what the state will do is you have to show progress, and if you don't show progress, the state will step in. And the risk that you run is that the district conceivably could become a level 3 district.
Of course.
And we have some schools that are on the top level and some schools that are on the bottom level. And our goal is that all of our schools, we want to raise expectations, not in some schools,
Of course.
but across the board in every school that we have. And that means that kids of all linguistic and ethnic backgrounds have to do better. And we have to make sure that we're offering a full and valued education to all of our kids, which is a top priority.
And who defines improvement?
The state does. And unfortunately, some of that is done through standardized testing, which we know are
Yeah.
very, they're
Complex.
controversial.
It's complex.
And it's
But
complex.
you need some form of measurement.
You have
So
to.
it's available.
And quite honestly, if we didn't have those standardized testing, I'm not sure we would have seen our district responding in the way that the district has over the
Right.
years. And there has always been some level of accountability and testing, you know, there is a definite feeling in the community that we are holding kids and teachers are teaching to the test, and we're holding kids time, you know, too much time
Time on that task.
on the test.
Yep.
And I don't disagree with that, but until we have worked out a better way, this is what we have before us, and it's the Commonwealth that's coming forward with this. And the Commonwealth is actually coming forward with a new, they're piloting a new test, the PARC test,
Yep.
currently. And that will eventually, if that is brought forward by the secretary, that will wind up taking the place of the MCAS test. And it's many people feel it is a
Statewide.
bet. Absolutely.
That's right. Well, we're
Absolutely.
actually into our last minute of this segment. We'll be back shortly. Just for those who are interested in the budget process, it's this coming Monday is the introduction of the budget. The first of the regular non-school department ones is Thursday, May 8th, all day, starting at 9 a.m. Then again on Thursday, May 15th, starting at 9 a.m.
So
And
before,
the school
Robert,
department is at Wednesday, May 21st at 6 p.m.
before that, tomorrow is April 23rd. What time?
No, it's 28th is the
Oh, April
introduction.
28th is the
Yeah.
first
Uh,
one.
Monday-
Okay, what-
Monday.
Anyway, we
Monday.
gotta go, so see you in a few minutes.
Inside Out.
All right.